Okay, and we're live. Everyone good? Great. I hope everybody managed to get up, have a little bit of a stretch after the last session, and you're ready to dig into this one. So this panel is myths and facts. And as we are starting to move from the why of social procurement, as we've talked about, we're starting to see some activity across multiple sectors, across federal government, municipal government that we've just talked about, the private sector. As we're seeing this momentum and starting to look towards the how, we're starting to see some common questions and conceptions maybe arising across different sectors and groups. And so the goal of this panel today is to start to bust some of them. So we have an awesome panel of leaders in the social procurement space from a variety of sectors. So we have Tim Coldwell joining us from Chandos Construction in the private sector and construction, Sandra Charles from Public Services Procurement Canada, bringing the government perspective, and Darcy Penner from SEDNet Manitoba, able to bring many years of experience of working with communities and what that looks like when we start to think about implementing social procurement. So this is a quick panel, so I'm not going to go into reading bios. Maybe just as we sort of start off with the conversation, you can all give us a brief intro to why you're here today and what you're particularly interested in busting. So Tim, maybe you can kick us off with an intro, but also which myth in particular are you looking to bust today?
Thanks, Elizabeth, and it's great to be here with Sandra and Darcy today. There'll be kind of a theme to my comments today, I expect. The overarching theme for us is a theme around private industry shouldn't wait for government to set policy. Like there's a lot of people in private industry who sit back and say, I can't do it because government's not forcing us to do it. You can get out in front of that, you can lead it. So there's a theme around that. The myth that I would like to bust is this idea that social procurement costs more. There's some nuance to that I can unpack as we move through the panel, but we have an abundance of evidence that it does not cost more when it's done correctly, and I think that's the myth I want to bust.
Great, thanks, Tim. And as you said, I know that you've got so many examples that you've been building up. So I'm looking forward to kind of digging in a bit deeper to what some of those examples, what you've been able to learn and how you're looking at kind of getting that information out there to others in your sector. Sandra, could you maybe give a bit of an intro to yourself and what myth it is that you're looking to bust today?
Thank you. Nice to be with all of you today. So I work at the federal government, in particular, specifically at Procurement Canada, and I want to tackle the best value myth. This idea that doing social procurement challenge the best value for taxpayers' money, therefore for Canadian. Social procurement is actually leveraging our purchasing power to add value to our procurement. It's really meeting the purchasing goal, which traditionally have been focused on the lowest cost, to really acknowledge that we can use the same tool to gain and achieve additional socioeconomic objective. So that's really something from a Government of Canada perspective that is very important to bust immediately. We do get the best value for money.
Great, thanks, Sandra. And I know, again, you've sort of been piloting these social procurement opportunities and have this evidence to sort of speak to some of that. So I'm looking forward to chatting about that a bit more as well. And Darcy, maybe you could give us a quick introduction to yourself and why it is you're interested in discussing this today, as well as the myth that you're looking to bust.
Thanks, Liz. And thank you everyone at Biosocial Canada for putting on this excellent event that I get to learn from here. My name is Darcy Penner. I'm calling in from Treaty 1 territory here in Winnipeg. I am the Manitoba Network Manager for the Canadian Community Economic Development Network. So we're a member network of organizations who are in that place of economic development and practicing economic development for sustainable and inclusive and sustainable and inclusive communities. And so I get the opportunity to support this group, support these organizations, many of whom are involved in either social enterprise work or are looking to engage, looking for demand, looking for how procurement can support their work, how can drive their work to create community health and their ability to create community wealth. So very grateful to be able to play that role. And I think 1.5 myths that I'm interested in, because it slightly pivoted while we were going around. Lots of questions around cost. Perhaps the myth that I'm interested in pushing there is that we're actually already spending the cost. The cost is already being incurred. It's a moral cost of ongoing what do we want our economy and our society to look like by not doing social procurement. There is the cost of these ongoing complex public problems. I mean, here in Manitoba, we've got 1 in 5 kids in Winnipeg is growing up in poverty. 1 in 3 folks who are Indigenous in Winnipeg are in poverty. We've got over 11,000 kids in care in the province and 1,700 folks incarcerated. So there's the crass, dehumanized fiscal question of it. There's the what kind of society do we want, and that there's also just the opportunity cost that is coming from the lost opportunity of all these folks and all these populations. So I think we're paying for it already. If we're going to look at the whole forest, not to take away from the excellent work that Tim and Sandra do getting into the nitty gritty. And I think what I'm learning also today is just the emphasis around collaboration and the opportunities that are there, which I'll pick up from where Tim runs with.
Great. Well, maybe Darcy, we can kind of run with you on that for a moment. You know, when you're talking about collaboration, I know there's been a lot of movement recently in Winnipeg, and a lot of your work really is about, as we're moving people towards the how do we learn together? How do we sort of broach some of those gaps across sectors? So maybe you could talk a little bit about what that work's looked like and how valuable it's been to have different sectors come together to kind of talk this through together.
Sure. And some of the limitations in what we've been able to achieve so far and the work that we need to do moving forward. SEDNet has played a convening role for our members around advocacy in multiple areas since our inception. One of those areas has been the procurement file, and we work in a collaborative fashion when it comes together, bringing together our members as well as other interested stakeholders for advocacy on particular issues. So that's kind of been the core and the base for where we here in Manitoba have been pushing on the public procurement side, on the demand side. And we've made recent gains with that when it comes to the City of Winnipeg establishing now a working group to guide the implementation and development and implementation of a social procurement policy. But we need to push that collaboration piece, I think, a fair bit further. Earlier in the conversation about creating an enthusiastic, engaged team that wants to get to the final goal and won't maybe necessarily get mired down in the technicalities around there. I think we have a strong role as the network and the drivers for this file to continue with the outreach, continue bringing folks together independent of particular working groups, but in informal settings, building those relationships and making the connections to really show what does community health look like? What is the final vision for what we're pushing here? And to situate the procurement piece within that so that there can be an engaged, enthusiastic team that is coming together around a flag of a vision. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Darcy. And Tim, I mean, when we're talking about collaboration, I think really being a leader in this space and encouraging others to practice social procurement, I don't think we could get much better than Chandos Construction there. So maybe you could talk to why this is important to you and how you're busting these myths, both internally at Chandos, but I think, you know, some of the work, as Tori mentioned earlier, around the voluntary CBA on Clark and First. What are you doing to bust those myths, and what could others sort of learn from that?
Yeah, and so I'm not going to take credit for all of the great work that Chandos does as an organization, but I've got a personal connection to social procurement. And so I self-identify as an at-risk youth. I was going to be in a cardboard box on the street if someone didn't give me a chance. And Chandos gave me a chance when I was 17, turning 18 or so. And I found a second family, a sense of purpose, a community in the construction industry. And I don't know where I'd be today if Chandos didn't take a chance on me. And so I've been at Chandos for 20 years, and now I'm the president. We've always been very active in the CSR space. And I kind of put air quotes around that. I'm very interested in the idea of using an existing business model to solve some of the greatest societal issues in the world. And differentiating and making profit while doing that. So that's Michael Porter's stuff. And the way we've done that is to really embrace social procurement. And so the best way I have of describing this, and this gets at what we're doing at First and Clark, City of Vancouver has a great CBA policy. Anything over 475,000 square feet of gross floor area needs a CBA. So we're doing a project. We were awarded a project called First and Clark with BC Housing, City of Vancouver, and Vancouver Coastal Health. It's only about 280, 300,000 square feet. So it fell below the City of Vancouver's threshold. That project, to Darcy's point about a passionate, engaged team that'll carry the flag and carry it over the goal line, that project is the first integrated project delivery project in British Columbia. And the delivery method that's used in construction significantly impacts the ability and cost associated with doing social procurement. I would suggest the social procurement does cost more if you use a hard bid delivery method. If you use construction management, progressive design build, integrated project delivery, and arguably P3, we have an abundance of evidence that it doesn't cost more. And to kind of cut through that, here's the example I give. We can hire anyone to push a broom for $18 an hour on our job sites. Let's hire the kid that's riding the bus 3 hours a day back and forth to high school, working 2 minimum wage jobs, trying to put food on the table for a brother or a sister because mom and dad aren't around. Let's hire that kid. And then when you give that kid an opportunity, they come to work with a big smile on their face. They're thankful for the opportunity that they've been given. A lot of folks think the construction industry is a career of last resort. We then put those kids into our apprenticeship program. We pay for them to go through trade school. Apprentice carpenters make $24 an hour. And red seal carpenters, depending on where you are in Canada, make $36 to $40 an hour, straight time. So we can take someone who's on a path towards crime and or poverty, and in a matter of 4 years, give them a high-paying job that pays them north of $100,000 a year, and give them that job in the construction industry. And it costs us nothing to do that. We're going to hire those people anyways. And so we've got this system built. And when you consider, I did a lot of work with United Way. There's a lot of evidence that would suggest that for every dollar invested in poverty reduction, there's a $3 savings to the Canadian social system. So we're creating jobs that pay $100,000 a year, and arguably those jobs are avoiding $300,000 a year of cost to the Canadian social system. That's a $400,000 a year delta per person. Ergo, I think an appropriate procurement policy for public owners in Canada would be to consider the contractor's ability to do those sorts of things on their project as part of the selection criteria. And that's essentially social procurement. And that's why I'm on this call, and that's why we're passionate about this.
Thanks, Tim. And I think what's really great, I'm glad that we're recording these because I'm sure everyone will want to listen back to those facts afterwards. I think that's what's so great, is that we're at that point where, when we have leaders like yourself, actually practicing and implementing this now, to have hard facts that we can kind of start to show the outcomes, the impacts, and to really bust those myths. And so I think, Sandra, that also relates to some of the work that's been going on at PSPC. There's been a number of pilots being run. So perhaps you could speak to some of that and how that has helped to start to shift the mindset of what social procurement implementation looks like, and again, to bust some of those myths.
Thank you. We embarked on the experimentation of social procurement back in 2018. It was social procurement is not new. Canada has been doing it. We have some program with Indigenous community that has been being done a long time ago. But I think that the pandemic and really some of those stark impact that it has on different population, and an acknowledgement of the imperative of being more diversified and inclusive, in particular as we prepare for the recovery, hopefully very soon. All of those considerations that makes it more important than ever. So we have continued, even during the pandemic, to test and pilot, and definitely, as Tim mentioned, really looking at different approaches, whether it's limited tendering, sole source contract, subcontracting and social criteria in procurement that really recognize socially advanced practices of businesses and give them points in regard to the evaluation are all approaches that have been tested. And really what we have found is, depending on the size and the type of category, there is an approach that is good to leverage the procurement and go beyond just procuring the specific good or services. Like Tim mentioned, when we think about employment and we know that a certain procurement is taking place in a region, to really look at how the composition of this region, how can we tailor our procurement to really tackle or help address unemployment. In terms of specific example, we have done 46 experimentation at different levels. And to summarize and to link it to what Darcy mentioned, we did learn that engagement is key and collaboration is key. In order to meet and respond to people need, community need, they need to be engaged, they need to be part of the decision making. And we have, for example, in the Black Business Pilot that we have launched recently, really work with industry association to test and learn from them. So definitely bringing back the two comments by my panelists, I do think that giving opportunity for businesses to demonstrate how they can implement social procurement and bring those benefits to the community, as well as engage with the people we want to impact their life, is imperative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's like you're saying, Sandra, it's helping to bust that myth around, isn't procurement just about money? Again, to sort of bring it back to that best value piece. Is that something that you would say these pilots have helped to bust?
Definitely, the fact that you're able to meet your procurement objective and then start counting the additional benefit that you receive, you're already busting and redefining, I guess, the best value principle, where it's not only financial, but like Darcy and Tim mentioned, it's the social return on investment that you get by going that route. So the evidence of best value, I think, is demonstrated. It's just that it needs to be reaffirmed, because still a lot of people believe that procurement is about the lowest cost. It's not. It's about the best value. So it's a little bit of education, but definitely in terms of demonstrating the best value, we have it every day. As soon as you have your good, but you're able to also count the number of jobs, the impact on diversity and inclusion, you demonstrate your impact.
And Darcy, I feel like a myth or a misconception that we sometimes hear is, there isn't a social enterprise that can do that, or, there isn't a social value supplier that can do that. From your work in the community, so what would you say back to that misconception?
Well, I mean, it's a possibility, depending on what the thing is, but it begs the question about, there's a demand side to this, and then there is the questions about, there's difference in market maturity, there's difference in circumstances as to why social enterprises have developed, or social purpose organizations have developed in particular fields doing particular work, and there's going to be a whole history of socioeconomic factors that led to that moment as to why we have strong social enterprises where we do. In the Winnipeg-centric context, we have strengths when it comes to small-scale construction work, as well as food services, which lends itself decently well when it comes to some of the public purchasers that we are pursuing. But we got to keep our eye on that there is supplier support that is going on out there, that we situate demand side public procurement as a key driver, but also part of a bigger ecosystem that we want to be supporting community wealth, supporting community-owned entities that are delivering the economic outcomes in the economy that we want for our communities. So, to push back on that myth, I would suggest that if the infrastructure isn't there, if the organizations aren't there, well, it sounds like we've got now a reason to start building and a reason to start doing the work. But also from the purchasing side, to ensure that as my co-panelists have talked to, that early integration, that early collaboration. Tim can speak to the details on, he's writing a dissertation in the chat there on the details of the different purchasing arrangements and contract arrangements, to make sure that collaboration piece is built in, so you do play on strengths and you don't end up with a gap or a flop down the line. If there's no one doing a work in a particular area, it's not a bad thing. But perhaps that's not the opportunity that we want to drive in on, especially in some of the early stages of doing this procurement work. So the more that we can be collaborative with where we apply it and how we apply it when it comes to all the stakeholders and parties involved, the more that we are likely to set ourselves up for success. And if there are gaps, what infrastructure needs to be put in place to start capturing the opportunity that exists in that gap?
Totally. That's a great point. And I think that really echoes some of what else has been talked about today, Darcy. Like you said, how do we get those opportunities communicated out there early enough? Be that from the government, be that from, other corporate purchasers. How do they communicate that? And as you're saying, the supply side will then look at how do we respond? What does that look like? I think that's a really valuable point to have raised. And I think one of the other things we've heard is also kind of thinking creatively, maybe thinking outside the box of those direct opportunities, but also thinking about the broader supply chain. And I know, Sandra, that's something that we've spoken about before, about how the government has both direct spending opportunities, but also has influence over the broader supply chain. Maybe that's something you could speak to.
So definitely, I want to say that the government has spent a lot of effort really tackling the barriers to the participation of diverse suppliers in the supply chain. And in that regard, definitely, we have the opportunity that procurement, a department like ours, we do procure 17 billion worth of goods and services per year. So we do have, we feel a great influence, and we definitely want to use that leverage to bring more awareness on accessibility and social procurement, not only in terms of accessible goods and services, but also businesses owned and led by persons with disability. The same thing goes with diverse supplier, whether it's Black entrepreneurship, other ethnicities, or small businesses are left out of the supply chain. Like Tim mentioned, we did look and we continue to look on the leveraging subcontracting. That could have a very good impact. Often what we found is that businesses, in particular small businesses or social enterprise, doesn't have the capacity to meet the requirement of $100 million procurement, but definitely could be integrated as part of the supply chain and use and procure what they really specialize to do. So definitely those are all things that should be leveraged. The government of Canada is looking at them. And circling back also on the mention about apprenticeship, we have lots of programs that provide training to different markets, to different sectors, to align our procurement with companies that can integrate those trainees at different stage of their development to help them gain experience and so on and so forth, are definitely things that that social procurement bring on the table.
Sandra, I'll jump in on that. A lot of our energy as a general contractor has to do with our ability to influence the supply chain. That's what general contractors like Chandos do. We hire subcontractors for 90% of the work, and we manage the entire supply chain. And the real power is doing social procurement, not just as us as the general contractor, but with our trade partners. And so a lot of folks have heard me talk about our partnership with Embers in Vancouver, with Marcia and the crew there. That's like the easy button for us as a contractor. We can call up Embers and say we need labor, and they send them to the job site, just like we get anywhere else from any labor organization, and they're accomplishing a social good through that. And then it makes it easy for me managing the supply chain to say to our subcontractors, the mechanical trade or the electrical trade, I know you have 30,000 man hours or person hours in your estimate, and you're carrying $30 an hour for labor. I can get you labor for $27.50 or $28 an hour for Embers, and it's going to be just as good as the labor that you'd use otherwise. So you're actually saving $1 an hour, and we're accomplishing a social good through this whole adventure. So that day labor model is particularly powerful for allowing us to push it down further into our supply chain. Just one last little kind of piece of the story is we've had such, and this kind of gets at the ability of contractors to propagate this around the country. So we've had such success in Vancouver with Embers. We have a project in Peterborough, Ontario, and the social enterprise ecosystem is not nearly as developed as it is in Vancouver. And we said, well, what if we could get a local social enterprise to expand their service offering to include day labor? We've got this project. We can guarantee $800,000 or $900,000 of revenue to a local social enterprise. That's a lot of money for a lot of social enterprises. That will get them going. And so we've reached out through our network, and we've got early stage conversations to make that happen in the city of Peterborough. So we come into town, we buy everything locally, and part of the legacy of us doing a project in that town is leaving behind a day labor social enterprise that'll address poverty for years ahead. That's a really powerful idea that we're excited about.
Yeah, Tim, we've got 3 minutes left, and I almost feel like that's such a motivating story to end on, but maybe we can kind of keep that motivation going and just have a final moment each. You're all leaders in this space. You're all working to kind of overcome these misconceptions. If you had one piece of advice and 1 minute for everybody on this call today about what they can kind of do within their sectors and their spaces to help push social procurement forward as we look forward to tomorrow, what would that be? Maybe Darcy, I'll start with you.
Sure, I'll riff off of what Tim was going there, because I think it's such an excellent example of some of the creativity that can come from this. And if we center community health and if we center community wealth in the process and we collaborate, I think I am excited for what the possibilities and the innovation is that's coming down the pipe. I hope that we cannot be too prescriptive in the context and how we want this work to happen, because I think we want to drive as much creativity and new types of partnerships such as Tim has highlighted there. So I'm very pleased for all what can come from this type of creativity and collaboration moving forward.
And Tim, final words, 1 minute.
Yeah, I would say you don't need to wait to be told to do it. I think the role of government is to kind of raise the floor, and private industry can raise the ceiling. And in my view, partnerships with social enterprises is an excellent way to do that.
And Sandra, 1 minute and one piece of final advice.
For me, it will be about taking risk. We shouldn't be afraid to take risk, to pilot, to test, because it's through those innovative approach and testing that we can advance the needle and make a difference through collaboration. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, you were all super speedy there, finishing off with your words of advice in a speedy manner. But yeah, I'm just really grateful to all of you. I hope that if anybody has any questions that we didn't get around to now, we have the networking sessions coming up over the lunch break. So thank you. And Sandra, maybe I'll just come back to you quickly to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 201.
75.
Here we go, Tori.
I think we have some feedback, so maybe if everyone can exit, and then I will read out the winner.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Great. So the winner is Anne Liddy Bole. So you'll be getting a Buy Social Canada mug, and we'll make sure that we contact you for where we'll be sending that. So now we're heading into our lunch break or afternoon tea, depending on where you are, maybe a midnight snack. I saw Sean coming in all the way from New Zealand. So please take a half-hour break, and then we'll be convening the themed breakout networking sessions. So these are designed for everybody who isn't on stage to have a chance to come and speak and connect with the other attendees and with each other. So the first two will be at 11:30 Pacific or 2:30 Eastern Time, and there will be one room on Power of Stories and one room on government procurement. So if you're interested in talking about those conversations, please join those rooms. There'll also be an open networking room that's open throughout. If you meet somebody in the chat or you want to just kind of have a more general conversation, you're welcome to use that space. And then at 11:50 or 2:50, we'll be having a session on Sell with Impact and a session on Buy with Impact. So come join those talks, have a chance to learn and meet each other, and then we'll be kicking it off back at the main stage at 12:15 or 3:15 p.m. So thanks so much, everybody. Enjoy your break, and we'll see you soon.